So rewatch that video.
What is up, people? My name is Richie. This is Eddie, and we are the Big Cash Crew. We're doing part two of last Wednesday's episode, where we went over a few things about end concerns with the three charts moving all in sync, why they were doing that, and what our thoughts were on that whole process.
Yeah.
So let's get into it.
Let's get started.
What are the benefits for pump and dumps in terms of financial institutions? Like, what do they stand to gain, or lose, or what is it that the media are trying to portray throughout these times?
Sure. We'll stick with the institutions first, and then get to the other players in the field. Richie has talked a lot about smart money, and he doesn't use the word dumb, but say not so smart money in the marketplace. And essentially what happens is when you do a pump and dump, and you can see this across multiple pairs or currencies, whatever you're looking at, what happens is the folks who have the lion's share, if you like, so whether it's like I don't want to name institutions, but say a large bank or a large institution will have a really, really large stakehold in something. And what they'll do is they'll find a way to drive up price, usually just by buying in more, or they'll find a way to drive down price, and they'll basically cancel everyone out of the market. So if you have a stop loss set, even if you're a responsible trader, you'll just get canceled out of your trade and you'll lose your position. Or you'll become so despondent, if you look at the world of crypto, that you say, well, I'm not really going to do that anymore, and I'll sell my position. And then what happens is you have a flow-on effect. So we saw this with Bitcoin. It was at 1985 before Christmas.
Exactly, yeah.
And now, I read an article yesterday. It's like it's floating with 9,000. And for some people, that's terrifying. Because if you bought it at, say, 19.7, well, if you bought $100 worth, you got 50, and that's not good. But this is just a natural thing that these folks do to sort of, I shouldn't say folks because they're nefarious people, to push you out of the market. And it's very good for them because what happens is then, if it's at 19.8 and they drop you down to 9 and everyone's gone, well, if they buy in and it goes back to 19.8, just do the math. And you think to yourself, if you're a normal guy and you got, say, 50, 100 grand to play on something, well, what if it's a bank and it's got 600 million? Like, this is a very, very different game. So that's sort of the basics of a pump and dump and how it can affect in a positive way a financial institution. That's
correct. Also with the pump and dump, throughout the time, especially with financial crashes, the market will crash like 30, 40%. But everyone forgets to tell everyone about over the next year, it's going to go up at least 65% from the previous high.
Just say one thing. Watch Eddie P's Sunday Forex reviews. I keep talking about this with the Great British Pound. If you're trading the pound, you're making cash for that reason. Anyway, please continue, Brother Richie.
So this is where you make the most money with these big retraces. And if you look at Ethereum, you can call out anyone in this current space at the moment that is saying that we're in a bearish market, because it's fucking bullshit. If you look at over the long term. Over the long term of the chart, we have not reached the lower low from where Ethereum started off. So we're still bullish. The same with Bitcoin. Bitcoin's still bullish. This retrace doesn't mean anything. Again, over a long time period, it probably looks bullish. But if you're looking at this amount of chart and you've got that amount of history, then you're going to make assumptions and you're going to get it wrong, basically. So it's really important to this is the first thing we teach people, is when you're looking at a chart, zoom out, because you get the bigger picture. If you're zoomed in to a day or a couple of days or a couple of weeks, you're not getting the picture. And then you are looking and you're thinking you are in a bearish market when you're actually in a bullish market.
Just to add a little bit to that. So one thing I haven't been shy about in our reviews on Forex and crypto and all the like, when I first started trading, I lost quite a bit of money. I mean, I lost, over 20% of my account in the first, I think it was 6 weeks or so.
Yeah.
And yeah, you whooped my ass a bit. But it was my own fault. And a big part of it was what Richie just said. I just wasn't zooming out. And one of the biggest things that we teach and you have to learn if you want to be a successful trader is trade what you see, not what you think. And if you're not zooming out and really looking at the greater trend of the trade and where the marketplace is, you're going to lose. And you're going to essentially be duped. I mean, that's what we're talking about, pump and dump schemes. So you will be tricked out of your money. And someone will basically steal what could be potentially your profits, your future profits from you. And you're going to be the only person to blame. So just keep that in view when you're trading. Also, a thing I cover in the Forex reviews over and over is get those damn trend lines drawn, because then these things won't happen. The things that Richie's talking about, you will be able to see potential opportunities and all those things, from further away, and you can see the opportunities in the weeks and months ahead.
Well, just going back to that pump and dump, like the benefits of it, like what sort of ammunition do you think that pump and dumps give, let's say, the media?
That's an excellent question. Excellent question. So I will say something about politics, but not something with necessarily a political position. So whatever you subscribe to, it doesn't really matter what channel. You'll see that, and it doesn't matter what country you're in. Political parties will come out on, say, a Monday, and they'll have a tagline or what they usually refer to as talking points. And by the end of business that day, whatever company, whether it's a newspaper or an online website or a broadcasting station, a TV station that has the same point of view as them, they'll be pressing the same thing, and it's no different in the financial world. I hope that you folks were watching when Ripple came out. CNBC was over this like water on rice, and I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but I bet dollars to pay that some of the folks over at NBC had an invested interest in this, and so do the folks in the Central Reserve Banks and Visa and MasterCard. So always be a bit cautious about where you're getting your information from, because these talking points just get dolled out, and the people who doll them out to the public, they have a vested interest in that as well. It's not just good that you get the news, it's where you're getting it from. So.
Just checking the camera a little bit.
Oh, my mistake. I'm one of those guys, bro.
So I suppose another aspect of the media is, of course, they're on the side of, what we've been led to believe or how we should live our life. The white picket fence, get married, do that whole shebang, like get married, have kids, get the house, white picket fence dream, like This is what we've been taught over and over and over again. And 80% of the population actually live like that. They want a secure job. They'll stay in that job for however long. And, for them, that's security. Whereas now we're in a new climate. We've got a new generations coming through. And they're risk adverse. They're not risk adverse. They will pummel 10 grand into a trade. They will do a lot of things just with the chance of hopefully benefiting or profiting from that particular move, which is pretty exciting because, we've got the crypto markets here now, and, and it's good to be surrounded by really positive people that want to see this excel and do really, really well. So with the pump and dump and the media influence, it's always going to be a double-edged sword. As I said last Wednesday before Christmas, the media were reporting that all the central banks and stuff were like, oh, this is all shit. It's not going to get any gravity. It's not going to get traction. It is just like a little bit of a myth. Now they're panicking because there's so much bloody money in this market. They're like, fucking hell, someone's going to take our profits away from us. And that's essentially what's going to happen further down the track, which probably leads me to the next question, Eddie, is, what is the current fears for the central bank and governments with cryptocurrency? Sure.
I'd love to address that. And, I do know a bit about central banking and all that. And I'd love to talk about that. I'd just like to just say one more thing. One of my favorite traders who's sort of in the public sphere that I've learned a fair bit from, he said something very interesting one day on a podcast. When he first started trading, it was around 2000. And when the crash in 2002, there was September 11th, and there was the dot-com burst, and then a lot of people lost money. And he realized there was a big opportunity for him to make money, and he didn't do it. And he pledged to himself that by the time the next bubble happened and the next time the market crashed, he would make a profit. And when 2008 came, he was ready.
That's pretty funny because Anthony Robbins and Gary Vaynerchuk were just discussing this earlier in the week. Was it earlier in the week or maybe it might have been last week? Gary Vaynerchuk is literally setting himself up now for the next financial crash because that's where you make all the money.
That's where you get
like,
paid.
you know, the panic sell, the fear, all the mongering goes on, and people just get brought into it, and people sell all their positions because they think that their dollar is now turned into 30 cents. And of course it has, but you're not in the markets for short-term growth. You're in the markets for long-term relief of a lifestyle that you potentially were stuck in. You know, that whole working for the same dude for the next 20 years and, you know, paying your fucking mortgage off for, like, what is it, 30 years?
45.
Like,
you can get a 45-year mortgage
fuck
now.
that. Yeah. Like, who wants to live like that?
It's not a way to...
No way. Anyway, like, they were discussing that whole statement that Edward just said, and it's just like you've got to prepare yourself for these times because they roll around every 9 years, 8 to 9 years, and if you're positioned yourself right now for the next one, which is, man, it's like days away, literally. It is so overdue. Indicators are looking pretty sweet for it to actually happen. There's a couple of big companies that have just gone down, which usually has a flow-on effect.
Yeah.
We've got a big one here in Australia, Maya, that is really just, it's like scraping along the surface. And if that goes, then that's going to cause turmoil throughout the entire country. And that will have a flow-on effect because obviously with a department store, you've got buyers, you've got people supplying, you've got, you know, a chain of services that go with that particular business that all of a sudden don't have their business.
Yeah.
And being a big player, that's probably that business, well, the subsidiary businesses' main accounts. So positioning yourself for these crashes is vital. I mean, I know that we've got cash on the side, getting ready to go short and do whatever it takes to get this to get the momentum down, and then do whatever it takes to sell at the bottom and buy in and go back up over the next. It was lucky. We did a lot of analysis a couple of years ago on this with a trading group.
I was just about to say, I don't know what you were saying.
Yeah,
you say it.
And
yeah.
and it was like it took 6 to 8 months to reach the bottom, and a year and a half to 3, was it? To
drive back up from the net
to get
the last crisis.
At least 60%, if not more, above where it fell from. And that's where you make your cash.
That's where you get paid.
Yeah, that's where you get paid.
I can speak quite fondly of it. Like I spoke in the last video I did last night. I'm a big nerd, so I love reading. And I remember when Richie and I met, and we compared not just data that we compiled from different reports and journal articles, but just charts going back to 1929, and it was pre-Brexit. He calls me up and he goes, dude, it's time to get paid. I'm like, well, I'm down, man. What are we doing? And he's like, you go look at this. I go look at this. And we had this brilliant meeting in this very room, actually. And we just looked at all this data going back, it's 85, 88 years, something like that now. And it's amazing how much is the same. All right, so actually I'm shaking the table. Let's not do that anymore. It doesn't really change, folks. And, you know, this thing that we keep harping on is that if you want to get wealthy, you know, we keep saying everybody looks like a rock star in a bull market. If you buy in at 10, it goes to 20, whoop-de fucking do, really, you know? But, you know, if it drops to 1 and you buy in and it goes to 35, well, who's a rock star then? And it's hard to look like a rock star when you put in a plan that takes 24 or 36 months to accomplish. But the real question is, you know, when I was a kid, my mother had this amazing partner when I was in high school, this really lovely guy from the Midwest, he's from Nebraska. And he always said to me, who do you want to be? And I was like, well, I don't know, you don't want to be me. And he said, no, you want to be the guy who laughs hardest on his way to the bank. And that's really what you're trying to accomplish. If you want to get wealthy, crashes are great. So when crypto goes from 19.5 or 19.58, whatever it was, to 9,000, you're looking at an opportunity, not a loss. You know, this is how you have to look at it.
Yep.
The banks are trying to force you out of the system. That's what they're trying to accomplish because they can buy in lower.
Yeah. The banks and media are basically in cahoots at the moment, and they're looking to destroy the industry because it's got momentum.
And I'll just add one tidbit, and this is hardly conspiracy stuff. You can look this up anywhere else. All the rating agencies that rate banks, okay, no matter where they're, you know, the top 5 banks in America or your mom and pop bank, all those ones, they take fees from the bank. All right, how do you think they make their income? And if they, you know, if they don't if they don't give the bank and certain loans a AAA rating, they're going to go out of business. So just be very careful about where you get your information from. and understand that your future, your financial future, is in your hands. It's not in the hands of a banker or financial planner. You have to be your own financial planner, and you have to dictate your own future. That's very important.
Very true. I couldn't probably emphasize that more. Watch who you're listening to and getting information from, because I'm spending a lot of time on YouTube, scouring around, looking at stuff, and specifically people in this space. Like, there's one guy I really like. His name's Crypto Crow, and you've probably heard of him.
He's a weird guy. He's a weird guy.
He's a pretty good guy.
And I heard he's like 7.5 feet tall, bro. That's what I heard.
He's 7 foot tall.
He's a big fella.
He's a big bastard. But he doesn't profess to be a trader, which is great. Like, he's doing what he's comfortable with, and the knowledge that he's giving is off of his own research, and it's true and accurate. He's quite a influential guy, and I really enjoy his channel. On the flip side of that, there was a couple of little numbnuts that I watched on the weekend that were just like this. This one kid was like 20 years old, and he's talking about Fibonacci and trading with volume and all this sort of stuff, and someone called him out on it, and like literally called him out and said, "Hey, all right, put your money where your mouth is. If you think you know what you know, I've been trading for X amount of years. I'll put down an account, and you put down an account, and let's just get into it for the next 3 months." And I was like, "Oh, that'd be interesting." So I was like, put my hand up. I was like, "I've got that." And obviously, I didn't realize that they were having a little bit of a bicker. But it's kind of like at that stage now. There's so many channels doing bits and pieces, and there's just a lot of bullshit out there. Like, everyone's trying to make a buck. Yeah, cool, you understand it, but like, if someone's coming at you with a chart to start with, and it's got 10 indicators or any more than 3, run for the hills. Like, that person does not know the right or the left side of the markets. Like, I saw a guy the other week, and he literally had about 8 indicators on his chart. Now, you've always got to keep in mind with indicators, they're lagging. Like, if you're going to enter off of an indicator, then it's based on history. It's not current. It's not reacting to that candle that's opened right then and there. So 9 times out of 10, you're missing the entry anyway. But yeah, information is vital, and the right information is key. Let's get back on track.
The central bank thing, I'd love to talk about a little bit.
Yeah, cool. So what do you think the potential outcome is as crypto gathers momentum moving forward?
Yeah. So from the banking side or from the side of crypto?
Either or.
Okay.
There's arguments to be had on both sides.
So I wouldn't say I have an expertise, but I know quite a bit about how central banks work. I've done a lot of research over the last it's been 3 years now. I've done a lot of research on this. Anyway, so I'll talk in sort of broad strokes, because I could probably talk for a week about this one topic, and Richie would fall asleep, and none of you would be watching the stream anymore, and then we're in a spot of trouble then. So with central banks, the way they work, the sort of condensed version, is a central bank or a government will say, we want more money in the economy. They'll go to a central bank, and the central bank will print bonds, which they'll essentially loan out at a measure of debt to the government. Right, and it doesn't matter which government it is, and most of you folks watching are probably in the U.S. of A., and that's what I've really studied is the Fed, or the Federal Reserve, which most of the people who watch this probably know what that is. But they will lend out these treasury bonds. They're called U.S. Treasury bonds, and they'll lend those out. So that's a unit of debt. And then on the back of that, the U.S. government, because they don't have gold reserves anymore, not since the 70s, on the back of that, then the U.S. government will print fiat currency, which we call money. Your George Washington, your Benjamin Franklin, if you pimpin', that kind of thing. So what that basically means is that for every dollar or even quarter or penny that is printed in the federal mint, it is just a debt owed to that Federal Reserve Bank, which is obscene. And I'm trying not to get emotional about this because I have some very strong thoughts about that. So that's what it is.
Very emotional.
I'm an emotional guy. What am I going to do?
At all times.
I'm pretty calm right now, I think. What do you think? No? 50-50. Anyway, what does that mean for us here in the world of crypto? This guy's a fucking prick sometimes. So in the world of crypto, what this means, and I think why there's been so much pressure from governments, and especially why the two largest or the two most powerful governments in the world, in world history actually, America and China, are against this is
China.
You got to have China. But the reason both the governments are against this is because if you decouple the power from the central banking system, the government loses its power, and that's really what they fear. And I remember last year when we first started playing around with some of these videos and things, we were looking at a $300 billion market cap in sort of, I think, was it August or September last year-ish. Yeah. That was for all of crypto, and that didn't mean a great deal to me. It was exciting because it was only up and up, but we come from the world of Forex where it's $4.5 trillion a day. 300 billion is what you do when you're taking a piss. But at the moment, if Bitcoin, or certainly Ethereum by 2019 will have 300 billion to itself, or perhaps more, then the central bank's got a real problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because fiat currency does not mean the same thing. And I'll say one more thing about this, and then I'll pass the ball back to Richie. Just understand that when you go to buy a loaf of bread and you pay $2 or $3, or you might get like some Whole Foods nonsense at $7.50. The fiat currency you use only has value because everyone agrees it has value. And that's the same thing with crypto. There's almost no difference really between an Ethereum, a Bitcoin, a Ripple token. It doesn't really make a difference. It's just what value people agree that particular asset actually has.
That's 100% correct.
And the only difference is that folks for, 9 centuries now, I mean, since the advent of banking in Europe, and I think it was the early 13th century, are just so used to having fiat currency that it's become commonplace to them, through generations. And now moving into sort of a different realm. But don't be afraid of this thing. And just understand that these folks out here, they do not have good intentions. And if you want to take care of yourself and your family, you've got to play the long game. Understand that the Federal Reserve banks do not have your best interest at heart, only their own.
Ever. I mean, you can see that depending on what country you live in, depends on what banking fees that you have to pay. Depends on what taxes you're paying. Like there's several different levels of finance that you're obliged to do to adhere to as a citizen of whichever particular country you're part of. Now that's probably where I pick up the ball a bit. Is there's an argument for both sides, and the argument for crypto is cool. It takes a lot of money out of the government's hands. Essentially, once it gets rolling, and that's a positive. You can stop. Basically, you can harness war because they're going to be, that's going to be throttled. But all you have to do is take 10% out of a government's budget, and they're kind of fucked. So you've got that, but then on the flip side,
can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
So I love what Richie just said. I hate to cut him off because he's on a bit of a roll, but I love what he just said about if you take 10% out of a government's budget, they're in trouble. When a government loses 10% of its budget, right, they go into stagflation because they're just going to have to print more money, and that's a hidden tax that no one ever talks about. With the world of crypto, because pretty much all these coins, whether they're alt or the major coins, they have a fixed number of coins. So inflation is not something you're going to have to face. I just thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah, that's really good.
It's a major difference between fiat and our altcoins and our cryptocurrency, and it's one you've got to keep in mind.
Yeah.
But just put it like this in your minds. If you're, say, like I'm 32 years old, so now I've got cash and I've got different things saved up, but let's say like at 60 I just said, Richie, I'm done, I'm just going to live on my thing. And let's say I retire even with a lot of money. Let's say I have $100 million, all right, or even 10, it doesn't make a difference. Say 100 because it's a nice round number. If I have $100 million in the bank, if the government is pumping up inflation at 2% a year, by the time I'm 70, I have 80 million. And 80, 100 people say, oh, it's a lot of money. Well, no, but what if I just did middle to well? What if I'm a factory worker and I have 100,000? And by the time I hit 70, I have 80,000 left. What am I going to leave to my children? So that's why it's really important to pay attention to this crypto stuff and be aware of what the banks are doing, because inflation is a hidden tax. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I had to throw that in there.
That's exactly right. Mm-hmm. So anyway, back to the double-sided argument. So we've got the army, and you'll take a lot of money out of funding, basically funding across the board, which gets me to the next point, is there's certain aspects, and I don't necessarily believe in the education system. I think it's just whatever it is, like, I don't believe in it myself. I think you do need education. I think there are different ways on how to educate your children or whatever. But that's another video. What it does do though, this is a negative, is it takes funding away from education. It'll take funding away from hospitals. It'll take funding away from a lot of public sectors that you rely on a day-to-day basis to just to live everyday life. That's the negative, and you can't have positive without negative. It just doesn't work like that. So it's something that we've got to be conscious with as this space grows. That okay, cool. We're going to take a lot of money out of the central banks because they've been screwing everyone over, and no one's going to mind that. But at the same time, as soon as you're doing that, you're taking it out of the government, and the government supports a whole bunch of other shit that you do actually need. So it's great having all your medical records on a blockchain and stuff, but if there's no doctors in that hospital to sort your ass out if you get cancer or you need, a heart treatment,
if you break your finger, I mean,
you fall over and break your toe, whatever. That's where the reality lies. And obviously we're talking. This could be long term, like 20, 30 years, but there's still an argument that you've got to sort of take into consideration as this space takes a hold.
Yeah. All I'd add to that, I mean, Richie's just all over this stuff. All I'd add to that is that everything in life has growing pains, and this is a major shift, and
it's a great shift.
It's a great shift. It's a great
awesome.
shift. But
it's the first time the financial markets have been shaken up ever.
Yeah, I'm a big student of history, and when you have a major shift, I mean, try and put yourself back in it was the end of the 15th century when Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press. I mean, this just changed the way people thought about everything, and the things that people were afraid of are things that we can't contemplate in the modern era because every one of us has a supercomputer in our pocket. So, with the world of crypto, it's going to change things, and there are going to be growing pains when things get shut down. But, I know Richie's not the world's biggest fan of Roger Ver, but I will say something that I heard him say in an interview recently I've
actually blocked that motherfucker on Twitter. I got no interest in what he has to say whatsoever.
You are swearing every 4 minutes on cue.
I swear all the time.
No, that's okay, but you're an eloquent fellow. Anyway, but I saw Roger Ver interview, and he said something that really hit me in the gut. He didn't want to support these governments and these central banks because he didn't believe in these foreign wars. I mean...
Actually, I read that a while ago about
important.
Roger. Yeah, and absolutely, that it is important, and that's kind of his way of getting back and taking that funding away from them.
Yeah,
it's pretty interesting.
And just think to yourself. I mean, at the end of the day, the way I see it and the way I think about it, I know Richie thinks about it, and Richie's also, he's got a family and everything, and I think about, what can I do for myself and my mother and my brother and my friends and everything. Like, what can I do for my community as well? It's like, let me put that power in my hands. If you want to give to, say, a religious institution, your church or your synagogue, whatever it is, I mean, just make a difference. Perhaps there's a community center where you can do something. Take the power into your hands.
Yeah,
and that's what being wealthy really gives you. Is it gives you personal freedom. That's really what it is.
It just gives you more choice. Like everyone has choice.
I love that. It gives you choice.
Everyone has choice to start with, and whether you do right or wrong with it is entirely your choice. But if you do have a couple of clams in your pocket, you have a lot more choice.
Huge.
Yeah, you can go to the Pacific Islands and build houses for people. Currently in Tonga, they could do with a bit of relief. And all that sort of stuff matters. Like, it's a bunch of cash that you're going to die with. And, it doesn't really matter. In my view, I'd rather it was spent on good rather than me dying with a bunch of zeros in my bank account doing whatever.
No purpose. I'll put it like this. I'm not the biggest fan of Dan Brown because he's sort of an airport novelist, but his books are entertaining. But he said something really interesting, and I think it was Digital Fortress, and he said, if you have money, you're never alone. And that's true. And it's not just from a selfish, it's from a selfless perspective. Just think of like that time when you were even 16 and your body's like bro, I need $10 for whatever. And you hooked him up, and then it sorted his life out, and that's how you have to think about it. And that's why this thing we're doing is so powerful, and why it can mean so much for yourself and your friends and family and all of you out there.
I don't even know how we got into this, but we'll end it there. Thank you so much for all the subscribers. Been really appreciating that. It's been awesome. Had a few people sharing our videos out there as well. That's been great. On the ticker down below here, we've got the double down. We have
double down.
New computer.
See.
Look at this bad boy.
And it wasn't cheap, bro. I can't even buy Yankees tickets for September. Anyway, I wanted box seats. I'm gonna buy that. I can't afford to buy the other ones now. It's pretty expensive.
So we will be doing the live stream. Is it this Saturday?
Yeah.
Yeah, this Saturday we're going to do the trial live stream. Part of that is obviously that bottom ticker, and we will do the double down.
Just say one thing about the live stream. For those of you on the East Coast of the U.S., I think we're coming in at about 6 p.m. your time. Yep. And if you're on the West Coast of the U.S., it's going to be about 3 p.m. your time that we'll be doing the live stream.
So on the double down, whatever is donated via Twitch or Super Chat on that particular day, I will personally trade the following week. I trade the London session pretty much Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's
look at Facebook. He's making
super profitable trade, and I will literally put that amount down on a trade, minus obviously brokerage fees and transfer fees and all that rest of it. But whatever is made out of that particular trade, if we do reach profit, which is highly likely, we will be selecting a random subscriber and sharing that profit with them. So make sure you subscribe, make sure you turn on the notifications, and check us out on Saturday, which is 6 p.m.
Eastern Standard Time. So if you're in the U.S. or look at a lot of folks in D.C., if you're in Boston, anywhere in New England, that's where I'm from. I'm from New York, this is my home. Anywhere there or even in Florida, you're looking at around 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're on the West Coast, it's going to be about 3 o'clock. And if you're in the Midwest, it depends where you are, but you're looking at about 4 to 4:30. And yeah, we'll upload it to probably Twitter as well after, so you'll have a look as well.
Like London and Asia. London's about 11 p.m.
A bit later.
And Asia is about 6 p.m. So kind of a time that everyone can sort of get on board and have a watch.
You gotta take a
anyway, thanks again for all those new subscribers. Really loving that. Means we're like, what the fuck are we doing?
We're doing videos, bro.
Have we done something wrong? Is no one liking us? But yeah, it's literally
That's good.
It's come straight out this week, and it's been really, really good. So thanks again, guys, and we will check you all back. Eddie will be back tomorrow with an ICO and altcoin review, and I will be back on Friday.
Yeah.
Cool. Until then, ciao.
Peace.